Hurricane Irma to batter Florida Peninsula through the night. Extremely dangerous Hurricane Irma first crashed into the Florida Keys on Sunday morning and then made a second landfall on Monroe Island on Florida's west coast Sunday afternoon, unleashing violent wind gusts up to 142 miles per hour and storm surge flooding. The storm was plowing up Florida's west coast Sunday night and, once it's over, forecasters feared that this storm will go down as one of the worst in the state's history. At 11 p.m., the storm was centered 50 miles southeast of Tampa. Its eye wall, containing the storm's most violent winds, had passed northeast of Sarasota. The storm center was plowing north at 14 miles per hour into the area between Tampa and Orlando. Through around 2 a.m. Monday, wind gusts of 75 to 100 miles per hour were possible in both cities, where winds had already gusted that high. Hurricane-force wind gusts were also quite possible on the east coast of central Florida into early Monday, the Hurricane Center said, thanks to Irma's large wind field. Around Tampa, once the storm center passes, a storm surge is possible of several feet above normally dry land early Monday morning, potentially inundating low-lying coastal areas. Irma's peak winds of 100 miles per hour, with higher gusts, had dropped 30 miles per hour from the morning, making it a Category 2 hurricane, down from a Category 4. Even with slow weakening likely to continue as the storm passes over land, Irma remains very serious and life-threatening. The National Hurricane Center said it is expected to remain a hurricane through Monday morning. Coastal waters could well above normally dry land along Florida's central Gulf Coast, inundating homes, businesses and roads, an imminent danger, according to the Hurricane Center. Because of the storm's magnitude, the entire state of Florida is being severely affected by damaging winds, torrential rains and, in many areas, the risk of tornadoes. Tropical storm and hurricane conditions were also predicted to spread into the Florida Panhandle, eastern Alabama, much of Georgia and southern South Carolina by Monday. Central Florida. Irma's eye wall passed on the east side of Sarasota around 10 p.m., and should pass between Tampa and Orlando through around 1 a.m., producing wind gusts between 75 and 100 miles per hour throughout the region. Once Irma's center passes north of Tampa Sunday, the seas will rise, likely resulting in areas of coastal inundation. On Florida's interior and even the east coast, tropical storm-force winds and hurricane-force gusts were fairly widespread Sunday evening. Orlando clocked a gust to 79 miles per hour and at St. Lucie, on the east coast, a gust reached 99 miles per hour. Southwest Florida. The worst winds had passed this region just prior to 9:30 p.m., but gusty showers continued on the storm's backside. Irma's eye wall passed through Fort Myers and Cape Coral just before 7 p.m., producing wind gusts of 88 and 101 miles per hour and then passed on the west side of Port Charlotte between 8 and 9 p.m. As the eye wall moved over Naples late Sunday afternoon, it reported sustained winds of 93 miles per hour and a gust to 142 miles per hour, the strongest recorded from this storm in the U.S. Josh Morgerman, a hurricane chaser positioned in Naples, described the scene. Went through violent, destructive winds. Screaming, whiteout, wreckage blowing by and fog. Then the eye moved overhead. Before the arrival of the storm center, water was actually retreating from Naples to Tampa due to offshore winds from the east pulling the sea back. But forecasters warned residents that shortly after the storm center passed to the north and winds blew back onshore, waters would rush back and rapidly causing severe inundation. In Naples, as of 7 p.m., water levels were about 4 feet above normally dry land, but the level was starting to stabilize around 8 p.m. Amazingly, it set its second lowest water level and highest water level all in the course of 8 hours. In Ft. Myers, water's levels were rising through 10 p.m., but not as dramatically as they had in Naples. Southeast Florida. In Southeast Florida, spiral bands continued to unleash tropical storm-force winds. Even into the evening, winds were gusting up to 60 to 75 miles per hour around Miami and West Palm Beach. 7 p.m. Gust of 75 miles per hour, but they weren't as strong as earlier. In the afternoon, Sustained winds in Miami and Fort Lauderdale reached 50 to 60 miles per hour through the early afternoon, gusting as high as 80 to 100 miles per hour. Miami International Airport clocked a gust to 94 miles per hour and an isolated gust hit 100 miles per hour at the University of Miami. Also during the afternoon, the seas had risen several feet above normally dry land. Social media photos and videos showed water pouring through Miami's streets, in between high-rises, amid sideways sheets of rains. Late Sunday afternoon, waters were finally starting to slowly recede around Miami. The Keys. While the core of the storm and worst winds passed the Keys early Sunday morning, the Weather Service warned storm surge flooding was ongoing as winds on the storm's backside shoved water over the islands. Gusts still reached 50 to 60 miles per hour as of 7:45 p.m. Early Sunday afternoon, the maximum surge at Cujo Key was estimated at 10 feet. Statewide, about 3 million customers were without power. Particularly in South and Central Florida, torrential rain was falling, with widespread totals of 6 to 10 inches and pockets up to 10 to 14 inches. Numerous flash flood warnings had been issued. As the storm's spiral bands walloped central and northern Florida, the potential for tornadoes arose in the swirling air, and the Weather Service issued watches and scores of warnings. Storm warnings in effect and predicted surge height and winds. Hurricane warnings cover all of Florida except the western panhandle, where a tropical storm warning was in effect. A storm surge warning was also issued for much of the Florida peninsula, except for a small section from North Miami Beach to Jupiter Inlet, and even extended up the Georgia coast into southern South Carolina. The Hurricane Center said that this would bring the risk of dangerous and life-threatening inundation and that the threat was highest along Florida's southwest coast and in the Florida Keys, where it said the surge is expected to be catastrophic. Because of the shift in the most likely storm track to the west, Miami and southeast Florida were most likely to miss the storm's intensely destructive core, known as the eye wall, where winds are strongest. Even so, because of Irma's enormous size, the entire Florida peninsula and even the panhandle were likely to witness damaging winds. The National Hurricane Center warned that the storm would bring life-threatening wind impacts to much of the state. Effects on Florida. Conditions will continue to deteriorate Sunday night over Florida and the central and north part of the state as Irma chugs up the coast. Conditions will slowly improve to the south. Through around midnight, Sarasota and Tampa would face the storm's brunt. Here's a guide to what is most likely and where. Key West, Key Largo. Time frame for worst conditions. Through Sunday afternoon. Hazard threats, wind, storm surge and drain. Wind gusts of up to 50 to 70 miles per hour should continue into the evening. A catastrophic storm surge of 5 to 10 feet or more is expected to inundate much of the island chain. Heavy rain will add to the water issues, as anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of additional rain will fall before the worst of the storm is over. Unfortunately, the damage potential on the Keys could be landscape-altering after taking a direct hit from this storm. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach. Time frame for worst conditions. Through Sunday night. Hazard threats, strong winds, tornadoes, heavy rain. Sustained winds of 45 to 70 miles per hour with gusts of 80+ mile per hour will last well into Sunday evening. Swirling winds at all levels of the atmosphere have also increased the chances of tornadoes developing at any point on Sunday, especially in locations right along the water. Rainfall totals of 4 to 8 inches or more are expected on Sunday alone, which may exacerbate localized flooding. With Irma's last-minute track shift to the west, the storm surge won't be as big of a concern here as it is elsewhere, with a 2 to 4 foot surge expected along much of Florida's east coast. Naples, Fort Myers, Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg. Time frame for worst conditions. Through Monday morning. Hazard threats, storm surge and wind. Irma's ultimate destination will be along the west coast of Florida. This means the conditions will deteriorate rapidly from Naples to Tampa Bay throughout Sunday afternoon. However, Irma's path will take it parallel to the west coast of Florida, keeping the entire region engulfed in the dangerous northeast quadrant of the storm, where winds are strongest. Sustained hurricane-force winds and gusts over 100 miles per hour should arrive in Naples Sunday afternoon and up to 75 to 100 miles per hour in St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay between 10 p.m. and midnight or so. The most dangerous hazard for this region will be the extreme storm surge. Nowhere in the entire state will the storm surge levels be higher than along the Gulf-facing coast, with storm surge totals of 8 to 12 feet and locally up to 15 feet forecast. Any coastal city from Tampa Bay south to Naples is at risk, with historic flooding, the likes of which haven't been seen in this area since Hurricane Donna in 1960, threatening thousands of people and structures. Orlando, Central Florida. Time frame for worst conditions, Sunday night through Monday morning. Hazard threats, wind, rain, and tornadoes. Inland areas won't escape the effects of Irma. The storm is extremely large in size, with tropical storm force winds extending outward over 200 miles from the center. The wind speeds in Central Florida and the Orlando area will start to pick up by late Sunday afternoon, with sustained winds of 40 to 60 miles per hour and gusts of 70+ miles per hour lasting from late Sunday night through Monday morning. Heavy rain will also cause problems, with a general 6 to 12+ inches of rain expected by the time the storm is over. The threat of tornadoes will increase by Sunday night, as well, as the storm center tracks north along the west coast of Florida. Jacksonville, Daytona Beach. Time frame for worst conditions, Sunday evening through Monday afternoon. Hazard threats, rain, tornadoes, wind. The northeast portion of Florida will be spared the worst of Irma but won't escape unscathed. Sustained tropical force winds of 40 to 55 miles per hour will overspread the area from Daytona Beach to Jacksonville by Sunday evening, with the worst winds, gusts up to 70 miles per hour, occurring overnight. Heavy rain will be a storyline here as 6 to 10+ inches of rain is expected to fall in a relatively short period. As with other parts of the state, the tornado threat will peak overnight on Sunday as Irma's storm center tracks northward. Storm surge values will be elevated, 2 to 4 feet, but should result in only minor to moderate coastal flooding. Potential effects on Georgia and the southeastern United States. Georgia/Atlanta/South Carolina. Time frame for worst conditions, Monday morning through Tuesday morning. Hazard threats, wind, rain and, at the coast, storm surge. Hurricane warnings extend well into Georgia, covering over half of the state. Parts of southern South Carolina also are under a hurricane warning, with Irma poised to maintain its hurricane force strength for several hours after landfall. Sustained tropical force winds of 25 to 45 miles per hour will spread over Georgia from south to north starting late Sunday night. The strongest sustained winds, 40 to 50 miles per hour, with gusts of 60+ miles per hour will move in on early Monday morning, lasting through Monday evening. This includes Atlanta, which is under a tropical storm warning, where sustained winds of 25 to 40 miles per hour with gusts up to 60 miles per hour will occur from about 10 p.m. Sunday night to about 5 p.m. Monday afternoon. This could lead to downed trees and outages. Heavy rain is also expected, with storm totals of 6 to 10 inches forecast, the bulk of which should fall Monday. Storm surge along the Georgia, South Carolina coast will be a hazard, as well, with the Hurricane Center predicting a surge of 4 to 6 feet. Of particular concern is the duration of the storm surge. Persistent onshore winds will extend the surge component here, with elevated water levels potentially lasting up to 36 hours. Irma's path so far. At 3:35 p.m. Sunday, Irma had made its second U.S. landfall of the day over Monroe Island, where a wind gust of 130 miles per hour was reported. Earlier, the storm officially made its initial U.S. landfall at Cujo Key at 9:10 a.m. As a Category 4 hurricane. Winds over the Keys raged, gusting to at least 94 miles per hour in Key West, before the wind instrument failed, and up to 120 miles per hour in Big Pine Key. Witness video showed the rising storm surge flooding Key West streets. Before its encounter with the Keys, Irma made landfall on the north coast of Cuba as a Category 5 hurricane just after 9 p.m. Friday, with maximum sustained winds of 160 miles per hour. It became that country's first Category 5 hurricane since 1924. Fueled by the extremely warm ocean temperatures, Irma re-intensified to the maximum hurricane classification level after weakening slightly on Friday afternoon. As it scraped Cuba's north coast early Saturday, It produced a sustained wind gust of 118 miles per hour, and a gust to 159 miles per hour was reported at Faya, Cuba, in the eye wall of the hurricane. On Friday, before making landfall along Cuba's north-central coast, Irma passed north of Haiti and then between Cuba's northeast coast and the central Bahamas. Thursday evening, the center of the storm passed very close to the Turks and Caicos, producing potentially catastrophic Category 5 winds. The storm surge was of particular concern, as the water had the potential to rise 16 to 20 feet above normally dry land in coastal sections north of the storm center, causing extreme inundation. A devastating storm surge and destructive winds had also probably battered the southeastern Bahamas, near Great Inagua Island. Through early Thursday, the storm had battered islands from Puerto Rico to the northern Lesser Antilles. While the center of Irma passed just north of Puerto Rico late Wednesday, a wind gust of 63 miles per hour was clocked in San Juan early Wednesday evening, and more than 900,000 people were reported to be without power. In Culebra, Puerto Rico, a small island 17 miles east of the main island, a wind gust registered 111 miles per hour in the afternoon. On Wednesday afternoon, the storm's eye had moved over Virgin Gorda in the British Virgin Islands, and its southern eye wall raked St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Early Wednesday afternoon, a wind gust to 131 miles per hour was clocked on Buck Island and 87 miles per hour on St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. On Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, the hurricane passed directly over Barbuda and St. Martin in the northern Leeward Islands, the strongest hurricane recorded in that region, and tied with the 1935 Florida Keys hurricane as the strongest Atlantic storm to strike land. As Barbuda took a direct hit, the weather station there clocked a wind gust to 155 miles per hour before it went offline. The storm also passed directly over Anguilla and St. Martin early Wednesday, causing severe damage. Irma's place in history. Irma's peak intensity, 185 miles per hour, ranks among the strongest in recorded history, exceeding the likes of Katrina, Andrew and Camille, whose winds peaked at 175 miles per hour. Among the most intense storms on record, it trails only Hurricane Allen in 1980, which had winds of 190 miles per hour. It is tied for second most intense with Hurricane Wilma in 2005, Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 and the 1935 Florida Keys hurricane. The storm maintained maximum wind speeds of at least 180 miles per hour for 37 hours, longer than any storm on Earth on record, passing Super Typhoon Haiyan, the previous record holder, 24 hours. Late Tuesday, its pressure dropped to 914 millibars. The lower the pressure, the stronger the storm, ranking as the lowest of any storm on record outside the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico in the Atlantic Basin. The storm has generated the most accumulated cyclone energy, a measure of a storm's duration and intensity, of any hurricane on record. Irma's landfall pressure of 929 millibars in the Florida Keys was the lowest for any U.S. landfalling hurricane since Katrina, 920 millibars, and for a Florida landfall since Andrew, 922 millibars. It ranks as the seventh lowest pressure of any U.S. landfalling storm. When Irma crashed into the Keys early Sunday as a Category 4, following Hurricane Harvey's assault in Texas, it marked the first time on record that two Category 4 storms had made landfall in the United States in the same year. Capital Weather Gang hurricane expert Brian McNulty contributed to this report. Credit to tropical weather expert and occasional Capital Weather Gang contributor Phil Klotzbach for some of the statistics in this section.